Good morning, everyone. So today we're going to be doing the units Apply Operational Maintenance Skills. So we're doing something a little bit different this week. Obviously, some of you are back at school and unable to use Zoom and YouTube and things like that. So what we're doing is basically doing a tutorial, so running through all the information, all the questions, giving you all the tools that you need to complete your assessment, and you'll be working on it in your own time. Okay, so what I'll do is basically I'll go question by question, and I'll also put up the slides that relate to each of the questions. We'll have a little chat about it, and you'll be able to find your own answers in there quite easily. All right, so we'll do what we always do before we start, is download our work and save it to our desktop. The reason we do that again is if you are working on it from College Cloud and your internet connection breaks down, you lose all your work as well. So I'll share my screen and show you how to do that again in case you haven't done it before. So when you're in your College Cloud like this, you open up Apply Operational Maintenance Skills. Okay, scroll down. So the two items I want you to download are your learner resource and your assessment resource. So one is your actual learner resource where you find all the information, and the other one is where you record all of your answers. Okay, so we'll just download those guys. You've also got some instructions on top here and instructions on the unit. So just read through those if you have time. Once you click on the item on your right hand side here, next to the printer icon, you've got your download, which will pop up with this. So this will allow you to save this document somewhere on your computer or in your files. So in your file name on the bottom here, you can leave the code. So leave that first bit in there and just pop in your name after the code. And then you can save it on your desktop, documents, downloads, wherever you like. Okay, somewhere where you know you can find it later on. Okay, so that's how we do that part. So I'll leave this up so I can share it with you. Once you've downloaded it, go and open it up from your computer and work on it from there. Okay, so at the end, once we've completed the assessment or the tutorial, I'll give you my email address if you haven't got it already, and I'll get you to email it to me directly. Alternatively, if your email is not working for whatever reason, you can upload it on the College Cloud here and submit it that way. So if you have any dramas, email me, or if you have Demi's email, she'll be able to help you out as well. All right, we'll get started, I guess. So I'll go through the question and then show you the slide that corresponds to it. So our first question on the assessment, if you open up your assessment resource, so the other one, not this one. Okay, you'll be able to see your questions. So question number one, name 3 types of compliance documentation. So compliance docs relate to things like, so you can follow me while I do it as well. There we go. So compliance documentation includes things like manufacturers' guidelines, Australian standards, codes of practice. So it's basically any information or document needed for you to work safely and within the law. So this will all be provided to you by your employer or your contractor. Okay, so you've got some things there. Codes of practice, Australian standards, employment and workplace relations legislation, equal employment opportunity and disability discrimination legislation. So generally when you start with a larger company, you will receive a big book, and that will have all of these, or most of these documents in it. You need to read and refer back to if you need to. Okay, so question 1, you should be able to find your answer on this slide. So you can stop this and start this anytime you like. So you press pause and write your answer down and then keep going. So you don't have to watch it 1,000 times. Also, compliance documents here should be referred to before starting any job, because it will provide you with useful information to help you do the job safely. Okay, so you talk to your supervisor or person in charge if you don't understand any of these documents, or you don't have any and you want to know something. Okay. Also really, really important that you understand each of those documents, okay? Because when you are working with specific tools and equipment, you need to know how to use those tools and equipment and how to do your job as safe as possible. So we've got question 2. List 6 sources of all kinds of instructions you may find in a workplace. So what are some ways that you can be given instructions, basically, before you start any job? So before you start any work, you need to confirm what you are doing, and you need to have some sort of instructions. So whether that's verbal, written instructions, whether you get some sort of plan to work from or some dimensions. If you're building, you know, a bench or something like that, your supervisor might just give you a set of dimensions he wants you to work within. Some other forms here can be graphical instructions, so any drawings, any signage, memos, emails, texts, diagrams, sketches, plans. Any of those things here should give you a good idea for question 2. Okay. So if you can list 6 sources or 6 types of instructions, this is where you'll find those. All right, we've got question 3. What is a safe work method statement? Safe work method statement you should be quite familiar with. We've done it for the last 2 weeks in your assessments. Scroll down a bit further. So you've got safe work method statement right here, or SWMS. It's generally used for high risk work. So safe work method statement details the specific hazards and risks related to the task that you are completing. Okay, so every time you're doing any sort of job, you'll have some tasks associated with it, or the job steps, the hazards associated with those job steps, and then how you're going to control them to make it safer to work. Okay, so for example, if you're working at a big construction site, some job steps might be offloading the truck with materials. So some potential hazards for that job step might be tripping or manual handling or muscle strain, something like that. And then your controls, the things you're going to put in place to help you work safer. So you can use things like trolleys, so you're not carting heavy things at once. You can put them all on the trolley. Also slip strip scores, so just making sure you've got your grounds are clear, you've got good housekeeping around the workplace, so less potential for you to trip over while you're offloading the truck. Okay, so it's just things like that. So for every job that you do, there's some job steps, hazards, and then things we can do to make it a safer workplace. So SWMS, that's what a SWMS is. Okay, so got a little breakdown of how to fill in a SWMS. So if you read through that, just like I mentioned now, you write down the job steps. Against each job step you write down the hazards, and then some things you're going to do to reduce those hazards. Question 4, what is a MSDS or SDS, so material safety data sheet, or I think it's been changed to just safety data sheet. Anyway, same document. So material safety data sheet is basically a document which has information about, important information about hazardous materials. So almost every product on a job site will have a MSDS, material safety data sheet. And within that document, there's 16 sections. So each section gives you information about that product. So for example, in one section, there might be what PPE do I use with that product? Another section might be how do I store that product? Another section might be some emergency procedures. So if you get that certain product in your eye or you get a rash, what do you do? Okay, so each product should have an MSDS associated with it so that you know how to use and handle that product safely. So that's question 4, which should be right here for you guys. Dual safety data sheet, have a read through there and you should find your answer. Question 5, what should you do if you do not understand the language or terminology being used in your workplace or your work instructions? So if you don't understand something or your boss has told you to do something you're not quite sure, don't go out and just do what you think he wants you to do. Best thing to do is just ask him again, ask him to explain it to you so that you understand what you need to do. Because being a new apprentice, for example, a lot of the worksite terminology can be a little bit hard to grasp because it's a little bit different to what you're used to. Okay, so it's really important that you confirm your instructions with your supervisor and, you know, write down some notes if you need to as well. And just so you know exactly what you're doing. And if you know exactly what you're doing, then you're going to be working safer as well and less potential for you to injure yourself. So question 5, if you don't understand the terminology or don't understand your work instructions, ask your supervisor or someone else that you're working with to clarify it for you. Question 6, list 5 examples of safety requirements. Safety requirements, obtaining, confirming and applying safety requirements. So this section here. So once you've determined your work instructions, once you know exactly what you are doing, there are some requirements or legislation that you need to follow to work safely. Okay, so what are some requirements? We've got some safety requirements here. So you need to have correct application of protective clothing and equipment. So you need to know how to put your PPE on correctly. You need to know how to use tools and equipment correctly. You need to know how to safely handle materials. Okay, so this section here. Question 6, list 5 examples of safety requirements. There's some examples there too. So you need to know your control hazard measures. You need to know how to use the firefighting equipment properly, where your first aid is, all those things. Right, so this section here. Moving on to question 7. What are 4 workplace emergency procedures? So emergency procedures relate to things like assembly points, things like shutdown procedures, fire extinguishers, first aid kits, things like that. So understanding where all those things are in a workplace. There's some points here that will help you for question 7. So what are 4 workplace emergency procedures? This section here should do the trick. Question 8, what is your duty of care? So when we speak about duty of care, that means you as an employee, or everyone has a duty of care. So everyone has a responsibility to look after themselves and also their co-workers. So if you see someone doing something that they shouldn't be doing, it's your responsibility or your duty of care to let the supervisor know, for example, what's going on. Okay? Because if anything happens to that person, they injure themselves, you could be held liable, okay, because you didn't report it. Okay, so question 8. Down here, all personnel or everyone has a legislative duty of care to work in a safe way to avoid harming themselves and others. Okay, so that's what that means there. Question 9, hierarchy of controls. So this is one that's come up a couple of times already. So we should be able to breeze through this one, but here's a table that will help you out. So Hierarchy of controls. Question 9, what is the hierarchy of hazard control? So list the 6 levels in order starting from the preferred method. The preferred method is the one that we want to use first, if possible. So level 1, our preferred method would be elimination. So elimination relates to removing the hazard completely if possible. So removing the hazard completely if possible. So for example, if you're using a ladder and it's, you're going quite high, it's probably better off that you eliminate the hazard by using something a little bit more appropriate, like maybe an EWP or scaffolding or something like that, rather than a ladder. Level 2, substitution. So substitution relates to doing a task differently. For example, if you have a piece of machinery that you're using for a certain task and it's not quite right, you can substitute it by purchasing another or hiring another piece of machinery that will do the job easier and safer. Okay, so purchasing different equipment or hiring different equipment. Level 3, isolation. So isolating the hazard. You can isolate a hazard, for example, by using barriers, fences, or lockout devices. So if you have a hazard in a certain area, you can isolate it by using those controls and eliminating any injuries. Level 4, engineering. So engineering controls. So this involves installing equipment to minimize the hazard or risk. So things like handrails and steps. For example, if you have a grinder that you're using and it doesn't have a guard on it, putting a guard on the grinder is classed as engineering the tool. So you've just engineered it, putting a guard on it to make it safer to use. Level 5, administrative practices. So that relates to things like safe work, method statements of SWIMs or safety procedures or guidelines. So if you've had an accident on the site, for example, it might be an issue of changing or rewriting some policies and procedures to make that task or that job safer to do. Level 6, PPE. So PPE, personal protective equipment, is your last resort of protection. So that should generally be worn at all times anyway. Cool. Question 10. So some forms of PPE you should be pretty familiar with. You've got your last line of defense, like I said before. Some PPE can include things like helmet, hard hat, face and eye protection, say glasses, or face shields or goggles, depending on your job, of course. Hearing protection if you're using machinery, so you've got, this guy here's got some earmuffs on and gloves. You've also got earplugs that you can use. Obviously gloves, protective clothing, including so aprons. If you're working in the kitchen or welding or something like that, you might use a welding jacket or an apron. High-vis or sun-smart clothing, so gardeners, for example, they've got their hats on with a wide brim to protect them from the sun because they're working outdoors all the time. Foot protection, so wearing the correct steel-cap boots or whatever is required. So question 10, personal protective equipment, this section here. All right, environmental protection requirements. So question 11. Before carrying out any work with hand or power tools, it's important to be aware of any environmental protection requirements of the site. So what they mean by that is if you're working in a state forest or something like that, you need to know that any of the trees you're chopping down aren't protected. Okay, so if certain trees are protected, you're not allowed to take them down, or quarries and things like that, whatever they might be. So you just need to advise or contact your local council and just make sure that whatever work you're doing on that site is not going to affect the environment. So they might have some guidelines that you need to work with if that forest is protected or certain sections of the forest are protected. So we'll start. So question 11, what are 3 environmental considerations required on the civil site? So environmental considerations can include things like waste management, where you dump your waste, water quality, noise control, vibration control, dust management, cleanup management, organisational project environment. So these little points here, any of those will do for question 11. So environmental management plan is a plan that aims to outline any steps and processes required to prevent or minimise harm to the environment through the use of tools and equipment. Okay, so just protecting the environment. So all care should be taken to avoid negative impact on the environment through the duration of the work. So you can talk to your supervisor on any details of that. So he would hopefully have a environmental plan in place for you guys, employees, to follow at this particular site. So it just goes into each of the different sections here and what they mean. So waste management includes things like taking steps to use environmentally friendly materials on your building site that you can recycle. Also implementing and sorting out your waste. So at the end of your build, making sure that you sort through your waste. So recycling can go in the recycling bin. Any general waste or hazardous materials are separated into each section. So that's what waste management is all about. Water quality protection, measures may be required for you to direct runoff to areas. So if you are doing a new build and you're washing off certain areas, you may need to follow some procedures to do that safely and not get any things in the stormwater, for example, any loose building materials and things like that. Noise control, so making sure that you are not too noisy while you work. For example, you might be affecting some wildlife, or there might be some residential areas around the area, so you may need to work within certain hours, operating within certain hours. For example, restrictions of operation maybe between sort of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. depending on the area. Vibration control as well, same thing, just making sure you're not disrupting anything else in that environment. Dust management, again, just making sure whatever work you're doing on that site, you're able to control the dust that you're creating. Okay, so you can do that by, you see a water truck here, you can do that by washing the site down on a regular basis throughout the day just to control the dust, especially if there are residential premises around the area. It might get tricky. So cleanup management again, so recycling and things like that, making sure your rubbish is collected appropriately and stored and thrown out in the correct manner. All right, so moving on to question 12. What is a mechanical system? So mechanical system, this section here, manages power to accomplish a task that involves forces and movement. Okay, so that is your answer there. So mechanical systems in the resource and infrastructure industry could include plant and equipment such as. Okay, so this is your next question, 13. Name 3 mechanical systems found in the resource and infrastructure industry. So they can be things like plate compactors, pumps, generators, earth moving equipment, conveyors and cranes. All right, so any three of those. Question 13. Question 14, why is it important to lubricate all moving parts on a mechanical system? Okay, pretty straightforward. Maintaining machinery is something that must be done to prevent major problems down the road. Okay, so the last thing you want to do when you get on site is have non-working equipment. So improper maintenance will shorten the lifespan of the machinery, cause it to break down, require costly repairs, and slow down your operations. All right, so always keeping your machinery lubricated. So question 14, all moving parts of the machine will eventually fail if they are not lubricated. Okay. Without proper lubrication, parts will create excess friction, and this friction can cause severe wear and tear on the machinery. Okay, so just so they can move and operate smoothly, just like a sliding door, for example, if you don't lubricate your sliding door, it's not going to be moving very freely and effectively for you. So similar concept for machinery as well. So that's for that one there. So as a result of this deterioration, the lifespan of the moving parts will be drastically shortened. So the machine will break down if it's not moving freely like it's supposed to. So in order to avoid this slow destruction, earth-moving machinery should be properly maintained and all moving parts should be well lubricated. Okay, so question 14, right here. Question 15, what are 3 common signs of wear and tear found in a mechanical system? Let's have a look. You can read through this slide yourself, just gives you a bit of an idea on how to clean the heavy machinery well and maintaining it regularly. So again, just washing it down and lubricating as often as possible. All right, question 15. So some common signs of wear and tear that you might come across when checking or servicing your machinery are vibrations. So vibration can be caused by a number of items, belt or gear glitches, higher temperatures than normal, so improper lubrication or overuse, maybe the root cause of heat, the heat source in your machinery. So if it's overheating, you may need to look into dropping in some coolant or lubricating it or whatever it is. Mishappened belts are another clue that something needs to be repaired. So fixing any issues as soon as they arise should fix those problems later down the track and make them worse. Question 15 done. So that's those 3 items there for your wear and tear. Question 16. So when you're carrying out your routine inspection on a machinery or piece of equipment, you find a broken part. What action should you take? So do you just jump on and use that equipment anyway, or what do you do? So the first thing you would do is let your supervisor know, so don't use the machine. Let your supervisor know. You would tag it out, so put a maintenance tag on there and list exactly what the problem is. And some sites will also have a maintenance log where you can record the fault, and then the maintenance team can have a look at that, fix whatever needs to be fixed, and then book the machine back out to be used. Okay, so as long as that tag is on there, no one will be using the machinery until it's been fixed and re-tagged, ready for use. Question 17, name 3 hand tools. So we did hand and power tools last week. This should be breeze, question 17. List 3 hand tools that could be used to maintain a mechanical system. So 3 hand tools can be used to maintain a mechanical system. So they can be things like for tightening mechanical system. So screwdrivers, right here would be one. spanners, and I would probably go with, if we have one here, a socket set. So what can you use to fasten nuts and bolts or tighten mechanical systems? So socket sets, screwdrivers, and spanners or wrenches. Okay, so they're the three items for question 17. Question 18, what do you do if you find a fault with a mechanical system? Just like with anything else, we mentioned it before, if you find any fault with any machines, tools, or anything like that, first thing you would do, let the supervisor know, record the fault and tag it out. Okay, so that's across the board. Any faults, do not use the machine, report it and tag it out. Question 19, name 3 power tools that could be used on a civil site. So 3 power tools. Go to power tools. Where are we? Here we go. So 3 power tools that we can use on a civil site. So any of these power tools are suitable. So just go through the list and list any 3. Okay, you've got your name on your left-hand side. Any 3 of those for question 19. All right, question 20. Name 2 alternative power sources. So alternative power sources. What they mean by that is what else other than batteries and a wall power socket can power tools on a site. So if you're working on a brand new site, there's no power you can use, no power sockets set up yet, no electricity. You've got your battery operated tools. How else can we generate power into our power tools that don't have batteries? It's the same as when you go camping, for example, you've got air compressors and generators. So air compressors are used for pneumatic tools, okay, which are tools that require air to operate, which is another power source right here. The other one is generators. The generators are electrical. Okay, so generators generate electricity or power for electrical tools. Air compressors generate air or power source for pneumatic tools. Okay, so these are your 2 sources of power, your other sources of power. Okay, so air compressors and generators for question 20. As you know, when you go camping and you're off-grid, you've either got solar power or you can take a generator with you. Power any appliances. Question 21. So what needs to be checked on an electrical tool before use? What needs to be checked on an electrical tool before use? So some things can include, so checking power tools before use. So you want to make sure that your leads aren't damaged, you're not missing any blades or any teeth on your blades. You want to check that all the electrical equipment has been tagged out and is safe to use. So you want to make sure it's been inspected for its currency. Any defective guards, switches or triggers, any of those things. When checking power tools, making sure everything is in good working order before you use it. Right there. Question 21. Checking power tools and leads and hoses. All right, 22. So what are the two main hazards associated with electrical equipment? Electrical hazards. So the main two safety hazards associated with electrical equipment include overcurrent and electrical shock. So overcurrent occurs when the electrical current to the tool is greater than the level for which it was designed. Okay, so if you're getting more power through your tool than what it's supposed to, it will overload the tool and it might fry, for example, or you might get electrocuted and cause a fire. Okay, so overcurrent is avoided by not overloading power tools or power points, extension cords and power boards with electrical equipment. I don't know if you guys have ever had this happen, but if in your house, if you turn on, say, the microwave and the kettle at the same time, if it's plugged into the same power source or power point, generally one of them will switch themselves off. Okay, and will cut power because they're just too, you've overloaded the power source. Okay. So you can use, on the side, you can use an RCD, which is a residual current device, and that's used to protect the equipment from overcurrents, and we'll shut it off completely if it does overload. Your other one, your electric shock here. Electric shock may occur if there is a physical contact with the wires or metal parts of a power tool. If you've got some exposed wires or anything like that and you're using a power tool, you touch those exposed live wires, you may get electrocuted. Okay, so the best way to avoid that is to make sure all power tools are in good condition before you use them. So again, checking that your hoses and leads and everything are in good working order. Question 23, reporting a fault. So what should you do if you find a fault with electrical equipment? Pretty easy, like I said before, with finding any fault. Don't attempt to use it yourself or fix it yourself. Attach a tag to it. Give it to the authorized person to fix and let your supervisor know. Okay, same procedure goes for any sort of fault reporting. Question 24. 3 considerations. So what are 3 considerations to ensure safe placement of leads and air hoses? Where should we put our leads and air hoses on the site? And do we put them on the ground where people can trip over like this, or is there a safer way to store them? So leads and hoses that are poorly placed or inadequately signposted or covered, they could cause someone to trip or may result in a power tool being pulled out of the operator's hand. So if someone's grinding, for example, or cutting using a saw, and you trip over that cord as they're using their saw, they might potentially cut their hand off, okay, because you've pulled it out of their hand and they've while they were still using it. So it's very dangerous and really important to keep leads out of the way, especially on the site where everyone's rushing around and trying to do a million things. So this obviously can damage material and can also cause serious risk or injury. So to ensure safe placement of leads and hoses, there must be clear of obstructions, such as other equipment and identified hazards, not under the feet of other workers, and not placed across the walkway. Okay, so question 24, these 3 dot points here. We did this last week. One thing we can do, we can put our leads overhead, so you can use poles or sort of towers where you can string your leads above overhead so that you don't have this issue. Okay, 25, when a power tool is connected to an electricity supply, it is said to be live. What does this mean? So what does it mean? They say live electricity. It's connecting to electrical supply. So when a power tool is connected to the electricity supply, the tool is set to be live. So this means that electricity is running to the power tool. Okay. So when it's live, it means there's electricity running through the wires, through the power tool. So do not touch it. Okay, got some caution. So caution is required because the tool could be activated accidentally and there is a risk of electric shock from the tool or power supply. Question 26. What are 3 considerations when connecting electrical appliances? So we spoke about that earlier on. So when connecting electrical appliances, right here, always make sure that the tool is turned off when connecting the tool's power lead to the power supply. So make sure your power is off on the tool before you connect it to the power supply. Okay, because say you're holding a grinder and you're holding the lead in the other hand and you go to plug it in while you're holding the grinder, you might have pressed the on button and you can potentially harm yourself. This power will kick in straight away. Never make contact with the metal pins on the power leads. Only use power boards with built-in RCDs. So we spoke about RCDs earlier on. Never use double adapters on a power board. Okay, so you don't want to overload the system, so don't use double adapters. Just use what's available. And never connect 2 power boards to increase the number of power points. Again, you'll be overloading the power supply. Okay, so question 26, dot points there. Question 27, what is a fastener? What is a fastener? Okay. So you've got some working compressed air, connecting hoses, we've just been through that. Fasteners. Okay, so a fastener is a type of hardware device that mechanically joins or fixes 2 or more objects together. So it just connects 2 objects together. In general, fasteners are used to create non-permanent joints. That is, joints that can be removed or dismantled without damaging the joining components. Okay, so you've got a key pin down here. Okay, so there are different types of fasteners used. You've got pins, keys, retaining rings. So these are retaining rings down there, I believe, to join things together temporarily. Okay, so what are fasteners? A fastener is a hardware device that mechanically joins 2 or more objects together. That's it right there. Question 28, describe 3 different types of fasteners. Okay, so you've got general fasteners, which are here, such as keys, pins, retaining rings. Threaded fasteners, okay, such as bolts, screws, studs, and set screws. Number 3 are rivets. So rivets are considered to be permanent fasteners since moving rivets will destroy them. Okay, so 3 different types of fasteners: general fasteners, threaded fasteners, and rivets. Okay, so question 29, identify 3 tools you would use to tighten and loosen fasteners. So general fasteners, you don't need anything to tighten or loosen them. Or rivets, don't need anything to tighten or loosen them because they're in permanently. But for threaded fasteners, what would you need to tighten and loosen them? Okay. So what we can use are screwdrivers, spanners, or wrenches to tighten and loose threaded fasteners. Okay, which have threads on them right there. Question 29, screwdrivers, spanners, or wrenches. Question 30, so name 3 types of PPE that should be used when using fasteners. So when you're using or installing any of these 3 fasteners, okay, what's some PPE that you could use? So I would say gloves, possibly eye protection. If you're putting these rivets in, it might cling back at you as you're trying to get one out or something like that, or even with your general fasteners, it might pop out. And possibly foot protection as well. Okay, so gloves, glasses, foot protection. For question 30. All right, moving on to 31. Question 31. What could happen if you forced a tool to operate outside of the manufacturer's specifications? So what can happen if you overload your tool and you don't use it correctly? So power tools need to be treated with respect at all times. A live tool has the potential to cause serious injury. All equipment must be used in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. So if you do overload those tools, serious injuries can happen. Okay, so you need to know the limits of your power tool so that you don't expect it to do any more than it's designed to do. Okay, so forcing a tool to work outside the manufacturer's specifications will damage the tool, produce unsatisfactory work quality, and also increase the risk of accident or injury to the operator and others around the work site. Okay, question 31, these 3 dot points here. Okay, if you're unsure how to use the tool safely and effectively, you can always check the manufacturer's instructions. Okay, and you also need to make sure that when you use any tools, that you have all guards safely installed, properly installed before you use them. Making sure, again, doing your full check, making sure everything's intact, tightened, and in place before you use it. Okay, question 32. So how could you use your sensors to indicate the early signs of a problem with a power tool? Okay, so for example, you're using a power tool, you start to smell a little bit funky. Okay, it might mean that it's getting overloaded, it's overheating, or you're not using the right, say, drill bit or whatever it is. Okay, so some early signs or some sensors you can use to identify the early signs of your tool failing include sound. So is there an unusual sound? So if you know you use your drill every single day, it starts to sound a little bit funny, then there might be something loose or wrong in there. You might need to lubricate or tighten or anything like that. So sound is one thing. Smell, like I mentioned earlier, if you smell a burning, might be a case of an electrical or mechanical problem. Okay, you might be getting overheated or overused. Also vibration. So if the tool's vibrating excessively or more than usual, might be issues with the motor or different loose parts in the machinery. Okay, so worthwhile checking over. So they're the 3 things for question 32, how you could use your sensors to identify a fault earlier on. Okay. Question 33. Why should you perform inspections on your tools after you have finished using them? So after you have finished using your tools, just find the section so you can follow. Cool. So why should you check your tools after you've used them? So basically, you want to make sure that it's all good to go for the next person. Okay. You check it before you use it, and you also check it before you hand it back. So you'll need to perform an inspection of your tool before and after use. This is to ensure any damage that has occurred will be identified as early as possible. So checking your tools after use, you might check for the same things, making sure your handles aren't loose, your bolts and screws are all intact and not loose. It's not worn or damaged. Any leads and attachments are still all good. Any cracks in the tool or the external casing, and making sure there's no blunt or damaged blades, for example. All right, so all of those things need to be checked before and after the use of the tool. So what document, question 34, what document should you refer to for specific advice on how to maintain tools and equipment? What document should you refer to? So if you need to know how to specifically use and maintain that tool and equipment, what do you refer to? That's again coming back, manufacturer's specifications. Okay, so manufacturer's specs will provide you with instructions on the best way to maintain tool and equipment. So that's what you would refer back to. Question 34. Question 35, identify 3 ways to clean your tools and equipment. So cleaning your tools and equipment right here. Okay, it gives you a table to follow. So for hand tools, for example, wiping down the tool to remove any dust or foreign materials, using hot soapy water and a wire brush to remove any caked on material, using steel wool to remove any rust, wiping down the tools with a dry rag or towel. Don't leave them out to dry in the sun. This will help prevent rust from forming. Okay, so make sure you dry them straight away so they don't rust. And oiling any blades that need it. Okay, or lubricating any parts of the machine. For power tools as well, so at the end of each day, if you keep your tools nice and good, you'll be able to use them for much longer and it will make your job a lot easier. All right, so power tools, always making sure the power tool is turned off and disconnected from the power source before cleaning. Okay, so making sure you have it plugged out of the wall when you have your batteries out as well when you're cleaning. Okay, it's blowing out the tool with compressed air to remove any dust or fine particles from the vents. Wiping down the tool with a damp cloth. Cleaning rag, avoiding power leads and metal casing. Drying the tool thoroughly with a towel, again, just to prevent rusting. Use a toothbrush to clean around switches. You want to make sure you clean around the switches thoroughly, because if you don't, it might be cake, might harden, and then you might not be able to turn your machine on and off as easily. Before, so looking after your equipment and look after you. Cool. Question 36. Where should tools be stored after use? Okay, let's find that one. Hand tools, power tools, air compressors. Where do we store our equipment after use? I'll find a slide for you guys. You would store it in its original casing, basically. So you want to make sure that your equipment is stored safely. Number one, to protect it from being damaged. Number two, if it's not stored safely and it's just lying around, someone might accidentally turn it on and it might cause an injury. Okay, so whenever you're not using a power tool, it should be placed safely out of the way where it cannot accidentally be switched on, knocked over, or trip someone. Okay, really important. And like I said, you want to maintain your tools and equipment as long as possible, because they do cost a bit of money if you get the good stuff. And yeah, so putting it in your casing. Also, when you're storing it, don't just chuck it in the back of your ute and then have it bouncing around as you're driving to and from work every day. Make sure you have a toolbox or something where it can safely sit without getting damaged every day. All right, so 36 should answer that. 37, why are tools stored in an allocated area after use? Sorry. So again, answer would be here. They should be stored in its allocated area, so they're not accidentally switched on, knocked over, or trip someone. Question 38, what should be done with discarded waste? So once you've finished on site, what should be done with all the waste? And when you're doing the cleanup, cleaning the work area, so it's really important to maintain your work area, clear your work area. So it's a good working practice to clean up as you go. Okay, so materials should be cleaned up accordingly, according to the environmental management plan and the safety management plan. So making sure that you don't just dump all materials in the one bin. Recycling should be divided up into recycling waste. Other waste materials should be divided into another bin and taken to the appropriate landfill. Okay, so making sure that all rubbish is collected and disposed of correctly, dispose of any debris properly without impacting negatively on the environment. So recycling is number one. All right, that's it, guys. So that's 38 questions done. Hope you went okay. If you have any issues, just email me, like I said. So I'll see if I can pop my email up here somewhere for you to see. Alternatively, you can upload your assessment on here, send it through, and that will come through to Demi. She'll pass it on to me. Cool. Any dramas, let me know. Thanks, guys.